and welcome to Frontline Conversations. I'm Abhinav Chakraborty, and today we have Ashutosh with us. Ashutosh is the senior journalist and the co founder of the news portal Satya Hindi. For many of us who grew up watching Hindi news channels in the 2000s, like including me, if I might add, he was one of the most familiar faces on TV, first at Aaj and then at IBN 7. He's also the author of several books such as Hindu Rashtra, The Crown Prince, The Gladiator, and The Hope, Battle for Change, Anna, 13 Days That Awakened India, and Mukhote Ka Rajthar. Today, we will be talking to him about his new book, Reclaiming Bharat, What Changed in 2024 and What Lies Ahead. It's an account wherein he dissects the 2024 Lok Sabha election and unravels the subtle signals and underlying factors that stopped the BJP's quest for a clear victory. I welcome you to the show, Mr. Ashutosh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhinav.
My first question would be that the 2024 Lok Sabha election was both exhausting and exhilarating, and you distilled its complexities into reclaiming Bharat. As a senior journalist, what was your process for capturing this pivotal moment? And how did your decades in media mold or influence your analysis of the election's impact on India's political and cultural identity?
See, Abhinav, thank you so much because it's a privilege to be interviewed by Frontline magazine, which I've always admired for decades, and one of the most just courageous magazines, and which is widely regarded, respected across the spectrum. So, thank you so much. See, let me tell you at the outset that this book, The Reclaiming Bharat, is not chronicling of events. This book is an attempt to understand the changes, the transformative changes which the country is going through since 2014. And within that context, I've tried to analyze Parliament election 2024. My earlier, you can say this is a sequel to my earlier book called Hindu Rashtra, because in Hindu Rashtra, again, I did not chronicle events. I tried to analyze, dissect, and understand and explore the 5 years of Narendra Modi government from 2014 to 2019 within an ideological framework. Because it will be naive, it will be rather mistaken to understand Modi government or the changes which has taken place in the last 10 years or more, just as a normal event, just as a normal analysis. Because what I personally believe that this is march of an ideological state. And when I say march of an ideological state, then I count at least 6-7 changes which has taken place in Indian polity in the last 11 years. Firstly, my understanding is that the transfer of power which happened between Mr. Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi is not an ordinary transfer of power. I compare it with the transfer of power which has taken place on 15th August 1947. I think it is so important and so exceptional because since Manmohan Singh government, there was a largely collective understanding about the basic parameters of Indian society and Indian polity. There was a collective consensus, which you can call it the constitutional consensus, the democratic consensus, or the Nehruvian consensus. That consensus was broken with the transfer of power from Manmohan Singh to Narendra Modi. And so first thing. Second thing is when I call it the march of an ideological state, then what is the ideology? Ideology is Hindutva. And Hindutva ideology is diametrically opposite to the constitutionalism, to the rule of law in the country, and to the Nehruvian consensus. So when we see the march of an ideological state, then it is important that we should look at the events and development through the prism of Hindutva and try to understand why things are happening the way it is happening. The third element is the nature of state. Because of the Hindutva, the nature of state has also changed. So many people are shocked to see the way state is behaving, the way the different institutions are behaving, the way even the media is behaving. So it is also because this state is not like what Manmohan Singh government was. But during Manmohan Singh government, you could have criticized threadbare. You could have attacked Manmohan Singh like left, right, and center, and still Manmohan Singh could come and tell you to the journalist that history will be more kind to me. That space is not available, and that it is because the nature of the state has changed. The fourth point, I think, like a left revolution, this is what we are witnessing today, is a right-wing revolution. It's a Hindutva revolution. And revolution has a three distinctive characteristics. The first characteristic is it disconnects itself from the past, it disrupts present, and it deconstructs future. Disconnectedness from the past means what? It doesn't want to connect itself or relate itself with the Nehruvian consensus. So whatever has happened before 2014, they want to stay away from there. And that is why you must have heard from the fringe elements that India got freedom in 2014. And the very recently, one of the RSS leaders has said that this is the real freedom we got, because in 1947 we got a political freedom. The disruption, I don't need to tell. Everybody has felt the disruption which the society is going through, the state is going through, the country is going through. But why this is happening? Because the ultimate goal of Hindutva is to create a Hindu Rashtra. A Hindu Rashtra, and if anybody is talking about the Hindu Rashtra, that means they don't believe in the Indian constitution. Because you can create a Hindu Rashtra only on the death of Indian constitution. So that's the fourth element. The fifth element is there is a reconstruction of the collective minds at the industrial level. Many of us who had witnessed the politics of society before 2014, after 2014, when we talk to them, you get shock. Even the family members are so vehemently unrecognizable these days. But the same person who used to talk a different language before 2014, now they're talking into a different language altogether. How this has happened? This has happened because RSS has been very categorical and said, I have been saying, कि हम शाखा में व्यक्ति का निर्माण करते हैं. तो जो व्यक्ति का निर्माण वो छोटे स्तर पे कर रहे थे, अब with the help of the state and with the help of the state sponsored propaganda, it has become a reconstruction of the collective minds at industrial level. And that's why many of us who sometimes speak the same language which the ruling elite wants us to speak without realizing that they have become the prisoner of the propaganda. That's the fifth element. The sixth element is again very, very important for the simple reason, which I don't want to say this in as many words, but when I look at the history and when I see the demise of the USSR, when the demise of a communist state in China, I'm not talking about the present state, but the Maoist state, or anywhere else, then I am dreading to think whether this country is heading for an historical accident. That's too early to talk about it. But I think somewhere down the line, we are also heading in that direction. So within this framework, I try to analyze the parliament election and also the history which has gone by from 2024 to 2014. It is basically my book is an exposition of that understanding.
You talked about the Nehruvian consensus, and one of my questions was going to be about that. And it's like you described when you said that it was not a routine affair, that you've described Narendra Modi's 2014 rise as a revolution. It's not a routine affair. And only recently, Yogendra Yadav, he was giving a speech somewhere, and he called the 2019 results the end of India's first republic. So how does your book characterize the 2014 election outcome, or are you hinting or suggesting at a reclamation of that Nehruvian consensus that you talked about, or a further an entrenchment, a further entrenchment of the BJP's vision for India?
See, Yogendra Yadav is a friend of mine, but I do not agree with his hypothesis fully, because if you want to understand 2019 and calling it the death of the first republic, then what about 2014? See, the process was on from 2025 onwards. when these forces, they captured the state, not captured in the sense, but in a democratic space, because it's not that they were an outlier and they came and they thus staged a coup or something like this. They were part of the democratic process. They earned the confidence of the people and they got elected at the in 2014 with full majority. So I think we have to understand from 1925 to 2014 and from 2014 to 2024 and onwards. Still 2014, the same forces were active within the four walls of the constitution. They were very much active within the democracy of this country. They were taking part in the democratic process of the country. And they could form the government when Atal Bihari Vajpayee became the prime minister. But now the natural question can be, why the nature of a state did not change when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the prime minister and an RSS Prabhu and an RSS Swayam Sevak? It's only because it was a coalition government. There was different kind of pressures. When in 2014, when Modi became the prime minister, they had an absolute majority in the parliament. So they were not dependent on others. This was the golden opportunity for them to implement their agenda. And people talk about hidden agenda. I never say that it's hidden agenda. BJP had never ever hidden their agenda. They talked about Article 374 much before anybody talked about it. They have been talking about the Uniform Civil Code. They've been talking about Ram Janambhoomi. They've been talking about pseudo-secularism. They've been talking about the Muslim appeasement. All kinds of things they were saying. So when they formed the government, then they had every right to implement their agenda like other political party did. The difference was earlier, whether there was a coalition government or there was a Congress government, there was more or less a consensus about the constitutionalism, consensus about equality, liberty, and fraternity, consensus about plural society, consensus about the democratic process, the consensus about that India has to be an inclusive society, not an exclusive society. The consensus was that democratic space should not shrink. All those consensus was there. There was no attempt to chase an utopia called Hindu Rashtra. Because with the implementation of the constitution, the utopia was a constitutional government where everybody is equal, where equality, liberty, fraternity is worshipped or respected. Everybody is equal. So with the implementation with the adoption of the constitution, that utopia was achieved. But here, a political force was operating into the four walls of the constitution, but they were not happy with that. When they got an opportunity, they unleashed the forces to achieve that utopia called Hindu Rashtra. That's why everything drastically changed. So if we look at things from 2019 perspective, probably we'll reach on the wrong conclusions. We have to first try to understand 1925 to 2014, and then the radical change which has taken place, because now the forces which were a fringe at one point of time had reached to the stage where they could control the government, and through government they control the mindset of the people and change the society. I think that's why it's a radical departure which happened in 2014.
Since again we keep returning to 2014, you also note in your book that there have been efforts to dismantle that Nehruvian consensus, and there have been active efforts to malign Jawaharlal Nehru. And now, given the 2024 results, which denied the BJP a solo majority, what does it mean for Nehru's idea of that pluralistic India? And how does your book, or how do you foresee that ideological battle between secularism and Hindutva unfolding?
See, this is the fundamental question which both the two books are trying to explore. That why they want to dismantle Nehruvian thought process. If, frankly speaking, they are not dismantling Nehruvian thought process, they are dismantling Gandhian thought process. Nehru is only the first milestone in that direction. Why it is so? Because RSS and the Hindutva knows in his heart that this is not the right time to annihilate Gandhian ideas because Gandhi is too powerful. Gandhi, probably people will not like it. So, and since Gandhi was not in the government, Nehru was in the government, and Nehru ran a government for 17 years. So, somebody who is in the government, it's easy to prick, easy to criticize, easy to find faults with him. Because anybody who's in the government, uh, how perfect that leader can be, how great that leader can be, there is always a scape to criticize. And Nehru being the successor of the Gandhi, and Gandhi chose him as a successor. And Gandhi knew that ideas which he has postulated are the ideas he has been spreading all through, which was the best of the Indian civilization. Nehru is the only one which can take it forward. And thank you. And we should be thankful to Gandhi that he chose Nehru as a successor and as a prime minister. Because look what happened in Pakistan. If I'm not totally telling, I'm not saying that the democracy in this country is only because of the Nehru, but Nehru was the leader of that pack of a galaxy of leaders. And Nehru was leading those great leaders. And they knew that what is the calling of the history. So RSS, BJP and the Hindutva, they basically want to dismantle the entire edifice created by Mahatma Gandhi. Since they can't attack him right now, so they are using Nehru to damage that edifice to substantial level. And why I'm saying so, Gandhi is for the RSS, Gandhi is the real enemy. Why I'm saying so? Because RSS fundamental is, when they go back in history, they realize that Hindus were too soft and they were too timid, and that is why they were ruled by Muslims and then the Christians. And what Savarkar talks about is, Savarkar very categorically puts it in his book, Six Glorious Epochs of Indian History, where all the good things about Hindutva are good things about Hindu, not Hindutva, good things about Hindu civilization, perverted virtues. उनको लगता है कि सत्य, अहिंसा, सहिष्णुता, प्रेम, विनयशीलता, ये हमारे हिंदू धर्म के बहुत ही बुनियादी मूल्य हैं. इनके बगैर हम हिंदू धर्म की कल्पना नहीं कर सकते. But Savarkar think that India became a slave of Muslims and the Christians. It's because of these virtues. So if India has to, if this history should not be repeated again, these virtues need to be changed. And Gandhi epitomizes these values. Gandhi talks about Satya, Ahimsa. And RSS has a problem with the word called non-violence. Because they think that the non-violence has made India too timid, has made Hindus too timid. So when they talk about the dismantling of the Nehruvian consensus, they are basically in the process of dismantling the Gandhian consensus. And through that, they want to dismantle the good things about Hindu civilization, which underlines and which basically the characteristics of Hinduness. So it's not only a political battle, it's not only an ideological battle, it's basically a civilizational battle too. And finally, when they'll get an opportunity, they will frontally attack Gandhi. And that is why this debate about the Nathuram Godse is a nationalist, is a patriot. And the large section of the people, they believe that Gandhi is responsible for the partition of the country. And they also believe that Gandhi is basically the originator of the Muslim appeasement during the Khilafat movement. But they say it not in as many words these days because they know India at large will not accept it.
I'll move over to a different subject for a while, which is the Election Commission of India. You've written a chapter about it called When the Referee Goes Rogue. So the ECI faced intense scrutiny over EVM efficacy and institutional credibility leading up to the 2024 election. So, how do you, through your book, assess the validity of these concerns? And what specific reforms should the ECI implement to restore public trust in India's electoral process?
See, that reform is not possible till this government is there. And I still feel that you don't need a reform. Frankly speaking, you don't you don't need a reform. Election Commission is one institution like any other institution. If the people occupying the post over there, if they don't succumb to the pressures of ideology called Hindutva, they will not be there. So they are very carefully chosen to be there to work for the creation of Hindu Rashtra. This is, and that is why you must have felt and seen the radical change in the Indian media. This radical change in the Indian media is only because of the ideological pressures, because the whole edifice of Indian state is now working within that ideological framework. So and the fight up to certain extent with the judiciary is for the simple reason, because in judiciary they are trying to guard their independence, but the judiciary is also feeling the heat, also feeling the pressures. Thankfully, judiciary has not surrendered till now, but Election Commission has surrendered, and totally surrendered, because those are the people who are occupying the high post there are handpicked by the government, and government is picking only those people who are either aligned with the ideology or they are too timid to stand up. Why I'm saying we don't need a reform for the simple reason, but I had covered Election Commission in the TN session was there and I know within that framework, if TN session could do so much, and if one person who deserves to be given Bharat Ratna, it is TN session. So if he could do so much for the restoration of Indian democracy, then these people operating within the same framework which was set by the TN session couldn't perform because they don't want to perform. So I don't think there is a reform is needed. And the concerns which has been raised by different people at the different level, the different political parties, different sectors of the society, that how Election Commission has failed to provide the level playing field. Those concerns are genuine concerns. But since I do not have, about the EVM thing, I don't have any evidence, so I will not talk about it. But yes, Election Commission is totally maligned. Election Commission is totally aligned with the government. Election Commission is an extended office of Bharatiya Janata Party. There is no doubt about it. 2024 Parliament election has been the most communal elections, most provocative elections. But Election Commission was sleeping somewhere else. They did not intervene. And I just want to remind the kind of language which was used by people occupying the high constitutional post. If TN session had been there, many of them would have landed in jail, or they would have forfeited their right to vote or to right to participate in the democracy. But since not everybody is at TN session, most of them are career bureaucrats, and so they are happy serving their masters without realizing that history will judge them in such a dark space that their kids and their grandparents will be very ashamed of that somebody from their family had occupied those posts.
Towards the end of your book, you have a chapter which highlights tactical Muslim voting in 2024, which is key to denying the BJP a majority. Yet recently, you see that the Waqf Amendment Bill's passage with NDA allies support, suggests that there is a limited amount of moderation despite the reliance on, say, secular allies, so-called secular allies, such as Nitish Kumar and N. Chandrababu Naidu. So, what does this portend for India's Muslim community during Modi's third term? And how does this challenge the notion of what you have called your book, Reclaiming Bharat?
See, Muslims are going through a tough time. There is no doubt about it. And I don't want to sound too provocative, but the fact is, if you talk to the large section of the Muslim intellectuals, or you talk to the large section of the Muslim middle class, they are going through a huge trauma, and many of them confided me in private that they never thought that India will be like this. They always believed that India is secular, India is a plural society, and Hindus are most tolerant person, and their identity as a Muslim was never questioned. There were criticism. They also admit that a section of the Muslims are also radicalized, and they may have gone the other way, but majority of them had been the good citizen of the country, like Hindus are good citizens of the country. What hurts them is when we question their commitment to the country, when we question their patriotism, when they question their nationalism, and that is what has hurt them. But they don't have any option. Earlier, they used to react, get very excited about any attack. In this election, they used their silence as a weapon of retaliation. They realized that in a society where they are much less in number, only 14% of the population, it's better not to get provoked, but be strategic in your thinking, be strategic in your demeanor, and be strategic in your outward behavior. That is why, and they reached to the conclusion that if every attack from the BJP or every attack on the Islam or every attack on the Muslims, if they start reacting, that rather they will be helping BJP or that will go for the benefits of the BJP. Instead, just keep quiet, do your job, go and vote. And as I mentioned in my book also, that they strategically thought about it, that the Muslims should not go in herds. Muslims should not be wearing their identities all the time, and they should be silently going and voting without being provoked. I think that has really helped them. And BJP, despite trying to polarize the elections, up to a certain extent, they did succeed, but not at a large extent. And that is where their failing lies. Because if the Muslims have reacted the way they used to react earlier in aggressive manner, that would have certainly helped BJP. So I think that is a very important development which has happened in the Muslim society. Then the Muslims has also reached to the conclusion that it is not whether the Shia is targeted or the Sunni is targeted, whether the Sayyid is targeted or the Pasmandas are targeted. The Muslim identity per se is in danger. So let's forget about our differences. Let's be together. Let's act as one community. And that is why in the last few years, if you notice, there's hardly any clashes between the Shias and the Sunnis. And they've also rejected the clergies, because they also believe that the clergies, these religious so-called leaders, they are damaged the image of the society more than anybody else. And they also need to be discarded. So a new middle class, a literate middle class is emerging among the Muslims, and who are focusing on businesses and educations. That if you are educated enough, if you are economically well off, then you will have more power in the structure than being illiterate and poor and trying to go for the political power. I think that's a good development in that sense. But it's tragic, it's traumatic that a community is targeted so badly. And my book in this election tried to 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 uh, to reach out to them and try to understand uh, what they are thinking and how they are thinking and what they think about the entire changes which is happening around.
Moving to Uttar Pradesh, in your book, you've detailed like one chapter is about Avdesh Prasad Pasi's secular campaign in Faizabad, which countered the BJP's Ram Mandir narrative. But since then, the BJP's, if you look at the BJP's recent Milkipur by-election win, it
Mm.
shows their resilience, you know. So, can the Samajwadi Party's Pichda Dalit Alpasankhyak coalition model effectively challenge Yogi Adityanath's Hindutva dominance in the 2027 UP Assembly election?
See, I think the two most important development occurred in 2024 parliament election. One was a purely political, other was a purely ideological. The Banaras election is a purely political, because it has busted the myth that Modi is invincible and Modi cannot be politically defeated. Whereas Ayodhya is an ideological thing. A person who was supposed to be invincible, had never lost an election, was literally on the verge of losing that election. And thanks to Amit Shah that he won. It's not about 1.45. See, people don't remember that Amit Shah stationed there in Banaras in the last 2 days before polling. If, Imagine if he had not been there. The most powerful person after Prime Minister was holding the fort for the Prime Minister. Why he was holding the fort for the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister was so comfortable. Our Prime Minister thought that he could win with a big margin, like 10 lakhs. There must have been some reason. I'm an ordinary journalist. My source of information is limited. But the government of India sits on a source of information which is unimaginable. Mr. Prime Minister and the government must have some information. That is why Amit Shah was sent on an emergency duty to be there in a station till the polling happens. So it was a political defeat in that sense, even if he won by 1.52. And I call it a humiliating victory. Ayodhya, look at the picture. 2 months back, Ram Mandir temple was consecrated with so much pomp and other things. And in Ayodhya, BJP is losing. And the person who was defeating them has coined one of the most radical slogans. Na Mathura na Kashi, Avdesh Pasi. Who was coining this? A Dalit. Where he was coining this? In Ayodhya. What is Ayodhya? Ayodhya is the reason for the resurgence of BJP to reach where it is today. Before Ayodhya movement, BJP was nowhere. It was reduced to only 2 seats. And a Dalit was contesting election from a general seat. So the whole edifice of BJP's ideology, that is Hindutva, comes down crashing. That if you can lose in Ayodhya, then what is the guarantee that when you lose in Ayodhya means that shows the fragility of the ideology and those who are trying to propagate that. So I think that is why I dealt in details about how the Ayodhya election happened and how the Banaras election has happened. And these two, everybody should realize, should try to understand, because BJP lost massively in Maharashtra and in UP, and both the states historically has been a ground for the Dalit assertion, a Dalit movement. Maharashtra is known for Baba Saheb Ambedkar and the Jyotiba Phule, and UP is known for experiment, the brilliant experiment which Kashiram did in electoral politics. If Baba Saheb Ambedkar failed in electoral politics, Kashiram proved that Dalits can do the electoral politics, can win that election. So Kashiram was nothing else but an extension of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Was trying to did an experiment which others failed. So that is why I focused on the UP and referred to Maharashtra.
In your book, you also say that how you wrote about how the Safe Constitution campaign and the caste census demand resonated with Dalit and OBC voters in 2024, and of course, it boosted the India bloc's numbers in parliament. Now you've had the Modi government's recent caste census announcement. Do you see it as a genuine response to public pressure or just a strategic move to blunt the opposition's edge in the upcoming election in Bihar? How do you interpret this shift?
I tried to explain the whole thing there in my book. See, this is basically an electoral compulsion which has dictated BJP to accept caste census. Otherwise, ideologically, BJP and RSS will never accept a caste census. Because in their thesis and in their sense of history, RSS believed that the Hindus were dominated by Muslims and the Christians for such a long period in history, almost 1,000 years. It's only because the Hindus were divided into the different castes. So there was nothing called Hindu unity. If this caste census is again instrumentalized, then again the caste identity will be paramount. And the meta identity with the BJP and the RSS had tried to create in the last 100 years will go for a toss. So But they also know that since 2014, a large section of Hindu society could be radicalized or ideologized, or they succeeded in creating a new Hindu mind. It is only because with the help of a state. Before 2014, there was a RSS. There were thousands and thousands of their workers, but they were not so powerful. The RSS ideology could spread so fast in the last 11 years. They became so powerful and formidable force only because they had a prime minister. They have a prime minister who's an RSS man, and there's a cabinet. And through the national government, they could capture the different institutions and could spread, could get legitimacy for the RSS ideology and Hindutva. But they know if Dalits and the OBCs, which derive their identity through constitution, because before the imposition of the constitution, before the adoption of the constitution, there was no concept of equality in this country. And it had never been. Equality had never been a value in this country for thousands of years. It was very unequal society. And this is what the Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said, the graded inequality, that even within the Brahmins, there were inequality. Forget about Brahmins and the Vaishyas and the Shudras and the OBCs. Within the Brahmins, there is inequality. So the constitution has brought in that equality. So legally speaking, constitutionally speaking, everybody is equal. But the concept of social equality is still missing in our society. Unless we get the social equality, there is a problem. So the Dalits and OBCs, they know that they can get the social equality as long as the constitution is there. If the constitution is not there tomorrow, then again they will back to square one. They will be treated the way they had been treated in the past. So for them, it became a matter of existence. And that is why, and they comprise of 70% of the population. So can BJP as a political party backed by the RSS afford not to talk about the concerns of the 70% of the population? If they do that, only at their own peril. And this is where the genius of the Rahul Gandhi lies. Because he is the one man who has been consistently talking about the caste census when everybody ridiculed him, everybody mocked him, everybody insulted him, including the journalists, many of our friends. He was vehement about this particular one, the caste census, and caste census. And he could do this. He also not only said it, but tried to implement in Karnataka and Telangana too. BJP realized that if this genie gets out of the bottle, then the table will be turned. And that is why, because of the electoral compulsion, they had gone for the caste census. So ideologically, BJP and RSS don't want a caste census, but because of the electoral compulsion, they have no other option than to do it reluctantly.
You argued in your book that the voters rejected, you were speaking about Varanasi earlier, and in your book, you argued that voters rejected Modi's divinity claims in 2024 due to, say, voter fatigue and local issues. But yet, the BJP's subsequent wins in, three assembly elections, say in Haryana, Maharashtra, and Delhi, with Modi less of a prominent figure in those campaigns, suggest a degree of adaptability. So, in your book, you are hinting, are you hinting at a BJP planning a post-Modi era already, and who might emerge as a successor to shape its future?
Let's not talk about BJP. It's an RSS government. BJP is only a political shop. So the succession plan will not be decided by the BJP, but by the RSS leaders. Like Mohan, Bhagwat, the people sitting in the Nagpur, they will decide the succession. They know that it's like Mohan Bhagwat just imagine a big company which has different verticals. And the big company it has got a, a chairman, and the different leaders of the verticals are called CEOs. So Mohan Bhagwat is the chairman of the chairman of the company called RSS. BJP is one of the verticals, and Modi as a CEO heads that vertical. So the things will be decided at the RSS level. Things will not be decided at the BJP level. Look at BJP has failed to appoint its party president. It's almost 1.5 years. Why? Because RSS doesn't agree with the choices given by the BJP. So what is important is that now the RSS has reached the conclusion that the gains which they got through the Modi government is humongous, is formidable. But the time has come to consolidate that gain. So now onward, they are looking for a leader who can help them save the gains, help them consolidate the gain, and be patient enough to plan for the next leap. Now, who can fit that bill? It's a very different question altogether. I can't tell you exactly that who can fit the bill, frankly speaking. But somebody who is more moderate than Modi. Somebody who could combine Hindutva in its core, but seems to be more democratic, seems to be more modern, seems to be more inclusive in appearance, in perception, somebody like that. Now, I leave it to your guests to think if you can find anybody who can, and somebody younger enough, because it's not that Modi will be replaced by Rajnath Singh, who's of his age only, of his age. No, somebody much younger. Only that person can replace Modi, but still don't feel that the Modi is going to be replaced very soon.
You talked about the RSS, and I'll come to it in a bit. But
Yeah.
my next question is going to be about the opposition.
Hmm.
So the India bloc showed a great degree of unity post 2024, and it was quite palpable in Parliament.
Hmm.
But leaders like Tejashwi Yadav and now Omar Abdullah have both questioned its viability, especially after losses in Delhi due to the AAP Congress rivalry. So, do you think can this bloc sustain cohesion until 2029? And what strategies can they, use? What strategies then can they use to counter the BJP's electoral dominance right now?
See, sad part is that India Gathbandhan as a whole has not been able to grasp the enormity of the crisis through which the country is going through. And that's a problem with the regional leaders. Because regional leaders are more worried about their region, about their own state, the politics in that state. Many of them lack the national perspective which is needed at the moment. That's the one fundamental reason that you see the different voices at the different times. Like Mamata Banerjee during the election will say that Congress will not get even more than 40 seats. Somebody who's a part of the India Gathbandhan can't be so absurd. You know that if you are rubbishing your own partner, then obviously you are damaging the India alliance. But those statements are being made. Sometimes you see Akhilesh Yadav saying something like this, some Tejasvi Yadav saying something like this. Even the Congress leaders are also saying something like this. Second point is that more or less all the coalition partners, they are competing for the same space, same secular liberal space. So if Congress gets very powerful, Congress gets Congress improves in its vote shares or in seat numbers, then at whose behest, but whose ground it will capture. Like suppose in UP, if the Congress is getting stronger, then obviously it will eat into the pie of Akhilesh Yadav. If the Congress gets stronger in Bihar, then obviously the Tejasvi will be damaged because they share the same socio-political space. So they are quite wary of each other. That is why this coalition is only a strategic coalition. Despite having the ideological affinity, it is not a sustainable coalition for a very long time. You know what I'm saying? Like if within the BJP look at, Take the case of Bihar. Nitish Kumar has a different social base altogether. A secular, a Muslim vote bank. BJP's social base is entirely different. So Nitish Kumar and the BJP is not competing for the same socio-political space. But Tejasvi Yadav and the CPIML and other left parties and the Congress, they are competing for the same socio-political space. That's why you see there will be more bickerings in the India Gathbandhan. But one thing for which Rahul Gandhi never gets a credit is that in the last few years, he has succeeded in creating a parallel ideological edifice, which is the three elements. One is secularism. He has tried to reassert the secular politics through his Bharat Jodo Yatra. Earlier, he was quite uncertain whether he should be talking about the minority issues, whether he should be talking about the Muslims or talking about the secularism. But through Bharat Jodo Yatra, when he got the confidence, support of the people, he is trying to resurrect secularism, which is slightly different from the secularism propagated before 2014. Now, his secularism is not a negation of religion, but it wants to engage with the religion. That's point number one. The point number two is the politics of social justice. Congress has never done the politics of social justice. That was done by Mulayam Singh Yadav, Ram Manohar Lohia, Karpuri Thakur, Vishwanath Pratap Singh and others. Congress had not done it. Rahul Gandhi has come to the conclusion that unless Congress gets the support of a substantial chunk of the OBCs, it will be difficult for the Congress to bounce back at a national party at the national level. They are a national party, but to form a government, you need 40% vote share. Today, the Congress is stuck at 20% and 22% vote share. From where they'll get the rest of the vote share? Upper caste is solidly with the BJP, which used to be with the Congress. Now the Muslims in UP, excuse me, Muslims in UP are with Akhilesh Yadav and Tejasvi Yadavs. So there's a lot of fragmentation has happened in their own social base. So when they're talking about secularism, the Muslims are realizing that the Congress is the only national party which can fight for them and their interest can be protected. When talking about a social justice politics, they are trying to target OBCs. They are trying to lure OBCs towards it, and the Dalits also. And then the constitutionalism. So these are the three pillars of the new ideology, which is secularism, social justice, and the constitutionalism. I will not say that it is spelled in as many words, like Hindutva is spelled properly in a very robust manner. Rahul Gandhi has not spelled in such a robust manner. But I could see that a parallel ideological edifice is being created. And that's the single most important gains for the India Gathbandhan and the Congress party. Because now they have a clarity of mind that in which direction we have to go. And one thing for which Rahul should be given credit for the simple reason is that he is saying the fight is not with the Modi, but fight is with the RSS. So he has identified the reason why, where it should be, where the battle should be fought. Tomorrow, if Mr. Modi is not there, somebody else from the BJP and the RSS will come and will almost pursue the same course, will almost run the government in the same way, maybe a slight difference here and there. So unless the Hindutva is fought, unless the Hindutva is being discredited, it will be difficult for the BJP to be defeated. So in that context, I had said that the opposition is trying to reclaim the ground which they have conceded to the BJP, whereas the government is trying to reclaim the ground which they think in history they have conceded to the Muslims and the Christians. So they want to go back in past thousands of years and want to get the Param Vaibhav Hindu, Param Vaibhav, jahan शहद और दूध की नदियां बहती थी. You know what? They want to recreate that Bharat. Whereas the opposition is trying to reclaim the Bharat which they have lost in 2014. A Bharat whose pillars were constitutionalism, democracy, secularism, rule of law, freedom of expression, Nehruvian ideas, Gandhian ideas, all those. So that is why I named the book called Reclaiming Bharat. It is different meaning for the BJP, it has a different meaning for the opposition.
And I'll come to my final question. This year is the centenary of the RSS, and your
Hmm.
epilogue, your book's epilogue, explores its internal turmoil post the 2024 results. And given, when you consider the fact that the BJP has had recent assembly election successes, and of course, what you also talk about what Mohan Bhagwat has said, about having a more accommodative stance. So, do you really think, like you've written about the Hindu right before in
Hmm.
another book,
Hmm.
do you really believe that the RSS can adopt an accommodative stance towards marginalized sections of, Indian society? Or are you sticking to your line, which you mentioned in your first answer, that the Hindutva and the constitutionalism are inimical to each other? What do you think?
Hindutva and constitutionalism are inimical to each other. There's no doubt about it. BJP, the RSS in its heart doesn't accept this constitution. And it's not now. When the constitution was adopted, even then they had said that there's nothing Indian in this constitution. And people will not, and the Hindus will not accept this. These are their words. Savarkar had almost said the same thing. Golwalkar has said almost the same thing. And both of them believe. And even the Deen Dayal Upadhyay in 1965 and onwards have said that Indian constitution is a threat to the India's unity and integrity. And Deen Dayal Upadhyay has never accepted the Indian federal structure. He said that this is the sign of weaknesses. This is what he has written in the Integral Humanism in his theoretical premises. And they have also, Deen Dayal Upadhyay has also talked about the Dharmaraj, that जिसके साथ धर्म है वही सर्वोपरि है. If one person is with the dharma, then the parliament and the majority doesn't matter. These are his words. So they have never accepted Indian constitution. The problem is they are competing in a political space. And since they are competing in the political space, from the day one, they can't go and say, we don't want this constitution. RSS has been talking about in as many words in harsher tones. BJP had not said in as many words. So the constitutionalism is not their baby. In their heart, they want a Hindu Rashtra. That's the point number one. The point number two is that Mohan Bhagwat, as you have mentioned, Mohan Bhagwat is today a worried man. He's very worried. He have realized in the large section of the and the top leadership, the RSS have realized that the way Hindutva is going, there is a possibility that this can get discredited like the political Islam got discredited at the global level. Today, the political Islam is perceived as a violent ideology, as a very intolerant ideology, as an ideology which has its mooring into the medieval history, and which doesn't accept other stream of thoughts. And the kind of negative press which Modi government and Hindutva has got at the global level, that had really made them thinking. And let's not forget it, RSS is a very resilient organization. It's a very patient organization. And it is willing to wait for another 25 years. So they don't want to get discredited the way political Islam has got discredited. There is a realization that this is the time when we should consolidate our gain, wait for some time, and then take a new ideological leap in future. The politics and ideology can be at the loggerheads. Because for Narendra Modi, becoming the Prime Minister can be his next priority. But for the RSS, capturing power is important. But their goal is Hindu unity. If they realize that forming the government can damage their Hindu unity project, then they can disown the politics. So now they know that it's good if we could remain in government because that helps us. But this government also need to change its nature. They have to, at least at the perception level, that perception has to be managed. That is why he's talking about कि without Muslim there is no Hindutva. हर मस्जिद में शिवलिंग क्यों खोजना, सबका डीएनए एक है. These are the vices which is quite strange for many people, because this gives an impression that the BJP is talking about BJP is an inclusive party. Yeah, the RSS is inclusive. No, that is not true. It's not that the Mohan Bhagwat want to surrender his ideology to save Hindutva. No. They are very happy the gains they have made, the gains which their ideology has made, the gains which Hindutva had made. So they want to keep it with themselves. But at the outset, they want to dispel the perception which has been created that Hindutva is divisive, Hindutva is violent, Hindutva is intolerant. Because if they don't control that, there is a chance of getting discredited, like political Islam had already been. But the problem is, they have trained generations of their Swayam Sevaks with that mindset, which is based on hate. Now you're telling your cadres not to hate. So basically you're mounted at a ferocious tiger. So you want to control that tiger. And you want to tell the tiger, stop eating non-vegetarian, eat vegetarian. The tiger can tell the rider, the man, you taught me to eat something else, now you're telling me to eat something else. I'll prefer to eat you than eat the vegetables. So they are mounting a ferocious tiger. How they will control it, it depends upon the way they manage things from here onwards, will decide the longevity of Hindutva. If they remain adventurous, as at this moment they are, because if you're calling Muslims infiltrator and all kinds of words which have been using, or you are digging everywhere to find a sibling, then it's an adventurous thing. And there is a great danger in this approach. That's why I'm still very, I'm not still talking about the historical accidents. So RSS have to do a lot of good work to tame the tiger and to wait for some time and then wait for the leap.
That's all we have for this episode of Frontline Conversations. It was a real pleasure having you, Mr. Ashutosh.
Thank you so much.